You sat through a commercial where a grown man tackled a kid over a candy bar, laughed until you choked on your cereal, and nobody at the network batted an eye. That was just Tuesday night in 1986. The 1980s were the last decade where ad agencies could put absolutely anything on television, and the only question anyone asked was whether it moved product. A jeans commercial that would get a brand canceled in 48 hours today ran during Family Hour without a single complaint. Number 47 on this list aired during the Super Bowl and somehow got funnier every time it was pulled from rotation. Number 12 got yanked after a single airing, and if you saw it live, you have never forgotten it. And then there is number 31, which a major network approved, aired once, and then pretended never existed. Here are 60 of the funniest commercials from the 1980s that are now banned. It's time to discuss the fruit that has an entire song dedicated to it. Chiquita bananas weren't just fruit. They were stars, thanks to their Carmen Miranda-inspired jingle.
Chiquita banana, and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a certain way.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say, don't deny it. You just sang that in your head. The adverts included a cartoon banana with a hat filled with other fruits to show us how to handle and consume bananas. Do not store them in the refrigerator, they advised. Let them ripen just right. It was like having a chef with a Broadway voice cook for me and explain what he was doing at the same time. Chiquita first introduced this tropical spectacle in 1944, and the campaign was so good that the song was played on the radio. The banana mascot had thus evolved into an American symbol by the 60s. My family adopted all of those lessons. No bananas in the fridge at any given time. The beauty of these ads was that they made the mundane and the prosaic look glamorous. Bananas became a luxury, entertaining, and a must-have in each breakfast. And who didn't want to join the chorus? Today's Chiquita logo is still in use, but the banana that sings is no more. However, for those of us who are old enough to remember this ad, there is always music playing in our heads when we are peeling a banana. Come on, you just ran your fingers over the skin of a banana to tell if it is ripe or not, right? Thanks, Chiquita. Every Saturday morning, American kids absorbed roughly 26 commercials per hour, mostly for sugar-loaded cereal. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, and Count Chocula were designed to exploit how a developing brain processes color, repetition, and reward. General Mills and Kellogg's spent hundreds of millions targeting viewers who could not read a nutrition label. In 1978, FTC Chairman Michael Pertschuk proposed the KidVid rules, a ban on all advertising aimed at children under 8. The cereal and toy industries declared war. Lobbyists branded Pertschuk the national nanny, and Congress stripped the FTC of its rulemaking authority over children's ads in 1980. The ban died before it started. Child psychologists later confirmed what the FTC suspected. Kids under 8 cannot distinguish a commercial from a program. The mascots were wiring brand loyalty into brains that had no defense against the technique. In the 1980s, sitcoms loved breaking the mold, and Who's the Boss did it beautifully. Tony Danza played Tony McKelly, a retired baseball player who took a job as a live-in housekeeper for Angela Bauer, a successful advertising executive and single mother. The setup flipped traditional gender roles, creating endless opportunities for both humor and heart. Tony's warmth and street-smart charm clashed perfectly with Angela's structured, work-obsessed personality. Their chemistry was undeniable, sparking years of will they or won't they tension that kept audiences hooked. At its core, the show was about family, the unconventional kind that proves love and respect can build stronger bonds than blood alone. Tony's daughter Samantha and Angela's son Jonathan added layers of tenderness, grounding the comedy in real emotion. The show tackled ideas about independence, equality, and changing family roles without ever losing its laughs. Who's the Boss felt like the 1980s itself, confident, evolving, and full of optimism for what modern families could look like. It wasn't just funny, it was quietly revolutionary, disguised as a feel-good sitcom. Johns Manville promoted asbestos as a miracle material, the foundation of a safe, fireproof American home. Their ads showed families in kitchens insulated with asbestos, kids beneath asbestos ceiling tiles, and workers handling the product without a dust mask. The faintly sweet smell of freshly cut asbestos board filled construction sites across the country, and nobody on the job questioned it. Internal correspondence unearthed during 70s and 80s lawsuits, known as the Sumner-Simpson Papers, revealed that executives had known for decades the material caused fatal lung disease. They discussed cancer risks in private memos while running public campaigns calling asbestos clean and modern. Dr. Irving Selikoff confirmed in the 1960s that exposure caused mesothelioma. The EPA issued a final rule banning most asbestos products in 1989, more than 40 years after the company's own scientists sounded the alarm. Chico and the Man charmed audiences with its odd couple pairing of an older garage owner and a young Chicano worker, but beneath the warmth lay humor that relied heavily on ethnic stereotypes. Freddie Prinze brought undeniable charisma to the role, delivering lines with timing and energy that made him a genuine star. The show wanted to showcase cultural clashes while finding common ground, but the path it took often stumbled through jokes that leaned too hard on accents, assumptions, and broad characterizations. Ed Brown, the grumpy older man, frequently made comments that were meant to highlight generational and cultural divides, but those comments often crossed lines that would never be acceptable today. Audiences loved the dynamic, but many of the punchlines depended on reducing cultures to easy stereotypes that got quick laughs. The show was praised for putting Latino characters in prime time when few others did, yet that praise came with an uncomfortable asterisk. Today, watching old episodes requires separating the groundbreaking representation from the cringe-worthy shortcuts the writers took to find humor. It remains a complicated piece of television history. A Garfield Christmas special proved that the lasagna-loving cat could deliver genuine holiday sentiment alongside his signature sarcasm, creating one of the most beloved animated specials of the entire decade. The plot followed Garfield, Odie, and John traveling to the family farm for Christmas, where Garfield encountered John's grandmother and discovered that even cynical cats could find meaning in holiday traditions. The animation had that classic 80s style, warm colors and expressive characters that made every scene feel cozy. Garfield complained about everything naturally, but his interactions with Grandma revealed a softer side that caught viewers off guard. The special balanced humor and heart with precision, letting jokes land while building toward genuinely touching moments about family, memory, and the passage of time. Kids laughed at Garfield's antics while parents found themselves unexpectedly moved by stories about the grandmother's late husband. Garfield's journey from grumpy passenger to cat who understood Christmas spirit mirrored what the best holiday specials accomplish: transformation through connection. Clara Peller became an unlikely superstar in the 1980s when she squinted at a tiny hamburger patty and demanded to know where the beef was hiding. The Wendy's commercials featuring this elderly woman and her exasperated catchphrase became instant sensations, spawning merchandise, political references, and parodies that proved how deeply the phrase penetrated American culture. The humor came from Clara's genuine frustration, delivered with authentic annoyance that viewers could not help but laugh at. Kids repeated the line constantly, parents used it to complain about anything disappointing, and Clara herself became a celebrity interviewed on talk shows. The original commercials were harmless, but Clara's subsequent appearance in a competing pasta sauce commercial violated her Wendy's contract and sparked a legal battle that ended her advertising career. Wendy's pulled the campaign, Clara faded from public view, and the phrase lingered as a cultural artifact with a complicated legacy. Regulators also scrutinized the ads for misleading claims about competitor sizes. Today, those commercials remind us how quickly advertising gold can turn controversial. Diet pill ads with unproven weight loss claims flooded television screens in the 1980s, offering miracle transformations with nothing more than a bottle of capsules. These commercials showed before and after photos so dramatic they seemed impossible, featuring people who claimed to have lost dozens of pounds without exercise or dieting. The pills promised to melt fat, boost metabolism, and reshape bodies while viewers slept. Women, especially targeted by these ads, believed the testimonials because they came from people who looked like neighbors sharing success stories. Nobody questioned whether the claims were true or whether ingredients were safe. Parents kept these bottles in medicine cabinets alongside vitamins, trusting that anything sold on national television must have passed some kind of approval. When regulators finally demanded clinical evidence for weight loss claims, most of these products vanished overnight. The ads that once promised effortless transformation became symbols of an era that sold hope without proof. Today, strict guidelines prevent such bold claims from reaching the airwaves, but the memory of those miracle pills lingers uncomfortably.
Let's start our nostalgic journey with The Cosby Show, a cornerstone of 1980s television that brought laughter into countless homes. Premiering in 1984, this groundbreaking sitcom depicted an upper-middle-class African-American family, a rarity at the time, showcasing the daily life and challenges faced by the Huxtable family with humor and warmth. The show's ability to blend humor with educational life lessons made it a staple in American households, peaking in popularity in the late 80s and making household names of its cast members. However, despite its significant impact and initial success, The Cosby Show ended in 1992. Its decline in viewership was attributed to a combination of changing viewer preferences, the natural progression of its storylines, and the evolving television landscape that saw new shows capturing the public's attention. The show ended with a mixed legacy due to Cosby's legal troubles, but is still cherished for its significant impact on television and African-American representation.
Gym teachers in the 1980s had a name for dodgeball that told you everything about how it was played. They called it murder ball. Two teams lined up on opposite sides of the gymnasium, and the rubber balls between them were not the soft foam versions sold today. They were hard, dense, and designed for kickball, with a surface that left raised welts on bare skin and enough weight to turn a close-range throw into something closer to assault. Hit someone, they sat down. Get hit, your dignity went with you. In 2013, the Journal of Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance inducted dodgeball into its Hall of Shame, alongside Red Rover and the rope climb. But the original version was worse. A 1922 guide published by Junior ROTC described a variation where the outer team threw medicine balls, weighing 7 to 12 pounds, at kids trapped in the center of the circle. Crawlers. Original hot plate sets were every kid's dream and every parent's nightmare. The idea was simple. Fill a metal mold with bottles of goo called Plastigoop, place it onto a miniature oven powered by an actual heating element, and watch as it baked into rubbery bugs, worms, and other creepy creatures. Kids loved the gross results, collectible critters perfect for pranks, trades, or scaring siblings. But the process of making them? That was dangerous. The ovens got blistering hot, reaching over 300 degrees, and kids stuck their fingers in constantly to check if their bugs were done. More than a few walked away with burned skin, melted carpet squares, and fumes strong enough to make eyes water. Parents complained, but the truth is, kids loved it precisely because it felt like a science experiment gone wrong. The sizzling smell of cooking plastic-filled kitchens, and the danger only made the final results feel cooler. The 1960s version had virtually no safety guards, no protective covers, and no timers, just a hot plate sitting on your counter waiting for accidents to happen. Later decades saw safer re-releases, but the original Creepy Crawlers kit became infamous as the kind of toy that could only exist in an era where danger was brushed aside as part of the fun. For kids, it was thrilling. For parents, it was terrifying. No wonder the original was eventually banned. Hand crank ice crushers with open gears were the kind of contraption that looked like they belonged in a factory rather than on a kitchen counter. These heavy metal machines had exposed gears that ground ice into shards with a satisfying crunch, and families used them for cocktails, snow cones, and summer drinks without ever guarding the moving parts. The crank handle spun freely, and the gears meshed with enough force to crush anything that slipped between them, including curious fingers. Kids loved turning the handle because it made them feel powerful, like they were operating real machinery. and parents rarely stopped them because fresh crushed ice outweighed any worry. Hair, sleeves, and jewelry all found their way into the gears, and the injuries ranged from painful pinches to far worse. The machine sat proudly on counters during parties, completely unshielded, humming with the mechanical charm the 1970s celebrated. Once modern appliance safety standards caught up with common sense, these crushers were banned for household use. It is almost comical to picture a kitchen tool with exposed industrial gears sitting next to the toaster, but that was how things worked. Life Alert's "I've fallen and I can't get up" commercial became one of the most unintentionally hilarious moments in advertising history, a sincere attempt to sell medical emergency devices that spawned decades of parodies. The original ad featured an elderly woman lying on the floor of her home, pressing a button on her necklace and delivering the now immortal line with such dramatic urgency that viewers could not decide whether to feel concerned or burst out laughing. The acting was stiff, the scenario exaggerated, and the production quality carried that unmistakable low-budget sheen of late-night television. Yet beneath the awkwardness was a real product solving a real problem, and the company sold millions of units to families worried about aging relatives living alone. Comedians quoted the line constantly, sketch shows recreated the scene with ridiculous variations, and the phrase entered everyday language as shorthand for any situation involving helplessness. What started as earnest marketing became a punchline that outlived the original campaign by decades. Looking back, it remains one of the clearest examples of advertising achieving fame for reasons its creators never intended or imagined. Taking turns opening gifts one at a time was a rule every 80s family established, and absolutely nobody followed for more than 3 presents. Parents loved the idea because it let everyone appreciate each gift, share the moment, and create memories together. Kids heard this rule and nodded politely, then immediately forgot it existed the second wrapping paper started flying. What usually happened was a chaotic free-for-all where multiple people ripped into packages simultaneously while someone yelled about waiting your turn and nobody listened. Some families had elaborate systems involving youngest to oldest, round-robin rotations or drawn numbers, but all of these collapsed under the weight of childhood impatience. The only time turn-taking actually worked was when a parent physically held the remaining presents hostage, refusing to distribute another until the previous one was properly acknowledged. Even then, kids fidgeted, whined, and stretched their arms toward the tree like they might spontaneously combust without another gift to open. By the end of most Christmas mornings, the rule was completely abandoned, and everyone agreed to pretend it never existed in the first place. It was a sitcom that took the simple setting of a roadside diner and turned it into a stage for comedy gold. The story followed Alice, a widow starting fresh as a waitress at Mel's Diner, a greasy spoon run by a gruff but lovable owner. Every shift brought new laughs thanks to the colorful staff and customers who came through the door. But the breakout star was Flo, the wisecracking waitress with a southern drawl and a sharp tongue. Her one-liners, especially her famous "Kiss My Grits," became part of 1970s pop culture. The charm of Alice was that it felt familiar. Anyone who had ever been to a diner could recognize the types of people who came in, from the regulars with odd habits to the travelers passing through. The diner became more than a workplace. It was a family of misfits who found humor and comfort in each other. Alice herself was the heart of the show, balancing motherhood, work, and the search for a better life, while Flo provided the sass and spark that kept things lively. The mix of heartfelt moments and laugh-out-loud humor made the show a hit with audiences. People saw themselves in the struggles of the characters, but also enjoyed the escape of their exaggerated personalities. Alice proved that even the most ordinary settings could be hilarious if the characters were strong enough. And Mel's Diner will always be remembered as one of television's funniest pit stops. What was wiggly, jiggly, and made kids feel like they were living the best life in the 60s? Jell-O gelatin. The commercials where people said, "You can't be a kid without it," made having dessert seem like a necessity. Jell-O was not only a dish, it was an event. Simply watching it bounce on the spoon before it was eaten was half the fun. My grandma loved making Jell-O, and she had molds for every occasion. Birthdays, holidays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Mondays, Wednesdays. I still recall how I used to look at those layers of neon color as if they were the most delicious pieces of cake. And let's not forget the ambitious recipes from that era. Jell-O salads with cottage cheese or, worse yet, tuna fish. The commercials were full of life with kids laughing while they ate their gelatin creations. Jell-O was so popular that it could even boast with stars. Bill Cosby became the face of Jell-O by the 70s, thus making it a pop icon. Today, while Jell-O is still a product that can be bought in a supermarket, the commercials with catchy tunes are no longer with us. But if you grew up with "You Can't Be a Kid Without It" echoing through your living room, you know the truth. Jell-O was not only a dessert, but it was a sensation. And yes, it still bounces happily, like a little kid's belly. National Airlines put young flight attendants on camera, had them stare straight at the viewer and say, "I'm Cheryl, fly me." The double meaning was the entire point. Print versions showed the women in suggestive poses, and the National Organization for Women filed formal complaints, calling the campaign a license for passengers to harass crew on every flight. National did not flinch. Bookings climbed throughout the decade as the airline rotated different women through the same loaded script. Pan Am's acquisition of the company in 1980 finally killed the ads. Behavioral researchers have since studied why provocation sells so effectively. Ads that trigger strong emotional arousal, whether positive or negative, create deeper brand recall than neutral ones. Every protest generated free publicity worth more than the campaign's own budget. Few sitcoms captured pure joy quite like Perfect Strangers. When Larry Appleton, a serious young man chasing the American dream, suddenly found himself sharing an apartment with his exuberant, naive cousin Balky from the fictional Mediterranean island of Mypos, the culture clash was comedy gold. Balky's broken English, unfiltered optimism, and constant misunderstandings clashed hilariously with Larry's control freak tendencies. Together, they made a pair that could turn even the simplest situation, like grocery shopping or dancing, into a masterpiece of physical comedy. What made the show work was its heart. Beneath the endless laughs and catchphrases like "Don't be ridiculous" was a friendship that showed how differences could make people stronger. It was silly but sincere, reminding audiences that kindness and patience could overcome anything, even a goat-herding cousin who thought everything in America was magical. The show's upbeat tone made it perfect for the 1980s, when optimism and big dreams were part of pop culture's DNA. By the end of its run, Perfect Strangers had cemented itself as a symbol of laughter, friendship, and the weird but wonderful chaos of trying to belong. R.J. Reynolds introduced Joe Camel to American audiences in 1988 as part of Camel's 75th anniversary campaign, and within 3 years, the cartoon mascot had become one of the most recognized advertising characters in the country. A 1991 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that 6-year-olds identified Joe Camel at the same rate they recognized the Disney Channel logo, over 90% recognition in both cases. The character wore sunglasses, played pool, and appeared on t-shirts and baseball caps bundled with cigarette purchases. Internal Reynolds documents from 1984 showed employees had identified the need to attract younger smokers, including those buying their first regular brand. The FTC filed a formal complaint in 1997 for unfair practices. Reynolds paid $10 million to settle with California, and the 1998 Master Settlement Agreement banned cartoon characters from cigarette advertising entirely. The Jeffersons walked a tightrope between social progress and biting commentary that sometimes veered into territory that feels difficult to revisit. George Jefferson was bold, ambitious, and unapologetically brash, delivering lines that were meant to provoke as much as entertain. The show tackled race, class, and ambition in ways that felt revolutionary, but it also relied on humor that leaned into stereotypes and sharp jabs that modern audiences interpret very differently. George's constant sparring with neighbors, his dismissive comments about nearly everyone around him, and his larger-than-life personality made him unforgettable. But some of those moments now feel like artifacts of an era that handled sensitive topics with far less caution. The interracial couple living next door was groundbreaking, Yet some of the jokes surrounding them have not aged gracefully. The show wanted to challenge audiences while making them laugh, and it succeeded wildly at both. Today, revisiting those episodes requires understanding the context and accepting that some jokes came with costs we did not fully see back then. What felt like progress sometimes carried echoes that ring uncomfortably in modern ears. Alf's Special Christmas took the fuzzy alien from sitcom wisecracker to unexpected emotional territory, proving that the 1980s had no problem mixing belly laughs with genuine tears during the holiday season. The plot found Alf wandering into a hospital on Christmas Eve, where he befriended a terminally ill girl whose situation made even cynical viewers reach for tissues. The show always balanced humor with heart, but this special pushed deeper into sentiment than most sitcom holiday episodes dared to venture. Alf cracked jokes about hospital food, confused nurses with alien antics, and still somehow delivered moments that felt surprisingly sincere and touching. Kids expecting puppet comedy got something far more complex. A story about mortality wrapped in holiday tinsel. Parents appreciated the ambition even when tonal shifts felt jarring. One moment, Alf hid in a laundry cart. The next, he comforted a dying child with words about hope and connection. The special became a holiday staple not because it was perfect, but because it tried something different. That kind of risk defined the best of 80s television. Winston Cigarettes sponsoring the Flintstones seems like a fever dream now, but in the early days, those animated commercials were as real as bedrock itself. Fred and Barney would take breaks from their prehistoric antics to light up Winston's, puffing contentedly while praising the smooth taste. The scenes showed cartoon characters sneaking away from chores, hiding from their wives, and sharing cigarettes like passing around a secret that made adulthood bearable. Kids at home saw their favorite animated heroes treating smoking as perfectly normal, even desirable. Parents laughed at the situations because they recognized themselves in Fred and Barney dodging responsibilities. The humor was situational, relying on classic domestic comedy tropes that happened to feature cigarettes as casual props. Nobody imagined these ads would become infamous examples of targeting children through trusted characters. When cigarette advertising on television was banned, these Flintstones commercials became shocking artifacts of an era that mixed cartoons and tobacco without hesitation. They remain banned and rarely shown except as cautionary examples of how advertising operated without ethical boundaries. Lawn dart ads showing children playing unsupervised filled television screens in the 1980s, presenting the heavy, sharp-pointed toys as the ultimate backyard fun for families. These commercials featured kids running barefoot across grass, tossing metal-tipped darts into the air, and cheering as they landed near plastic target rings. Parents watched these ads and saw wholesome outdoor activity, the kind of simple summer entertainment that kept children happy. Nobody questioned whether launching weighted projectiles near playing children might be dangerous, because the commercials made it look effortless and safe. The ads showed laughter, competition, and family bonding, never depicting the accidents emergency rooms documented across the country. When a child died from a lawn dart injury and grieving parents demanded action, regulators finally stepped in. The product was banned entirely, and the commercials that once made it look innocent vanished from the airwaves. Today, lawn darts remain one of the clearest examples of how advertising can shape perception, making danger look like harmless fun until tragedy forces everyone to see the truth.
Diving into the action-packed world of Miami Vice, we're transported to the vibrant streets of 1980s Miami, where the show set new trends in style and music. Premiering in 1984, it was notable for its pastel suits and synthesizer-heavy soundtrack, defining a decade's aesthetic. The series followed detectives Sonny Crockett and Ricardo Tubbs, blending crime drama with fashion and music, achieving groundbreaking cinematic quality. However, by the late 80s, the show saw a decline in popularity due to repetitive storylines and evolving viewer tastes, leading to its conclusion in 1989. The changing landscape of television entertainment, coupled with audience desire for new narratives, signaled the end for Miami Vice. Despite its decline, the show remains iconic, celebrated for its significant influence on popular culture, fashion, and the way it captured the spirit of its era, leaving an indelible mark on television history.
Near the ceiling of every school gym, a thick braided rope hung from a steel hook, dangling 20 or more feet above a single mat so thin you could feel the hardwood floor through it. The gym teacher blew a whistle, and one by one, students were expected to climb. No harness, no second mat. The spotter was usually a classmate whose attention lasted about 4 seconds. In 2013, the rope climb was inducted into the Physical Education Hall of Shame, described as a perfect storm of low participation, extreme danger, thin mats, inattentive spotters, rope burns on hands and legs, and the grand spectacle of one student struggling while an entire class sat and watched. For the handful who reached the top, the reward was a view of ceiling dust and exposed ductwork. For everyone else, the reward was shredded palms and a grade that punished them for having short arms. Whammo Water. Wiggle was marketed as a fun backyard sprinkler, but in practice, it was chaos. The toy was a long plastic tube attached to a garden hose with a goofy head on the end. Once the water was turned on, the head whipped wildly in every direction, spraying water unpredictably. It was hilarious at first, like a wiggling snake thrashing across the lawn. But then reality hit. The water wiggle whipped with such force that it smacked kids in the face, left bruises, and even knocked a few teeth loose. Parents tried to supervise, but the toy was completely uncontrollable once the water pressure kicked in. Some kids ended up in tears while others laughed hysterically at the unpredictable thrashing. It became less of a sprinkler and more of a dangerous hose weapon. Wham-O eventually recalled it after too many injuries piled up, but for a time, it was one of the most bizarre and memorable backyard toys of the 1960s. Looking back, it is funny to think kids begged for what was essentially a water-fueled whip to the face. Plastic pitcher sets made with BPA-laced resin were a colorful staple in every 1970s kitchen, lined up on refrigerator shelves like a rainbow of refreshment waiting to be poured. These pitchers came in cheerful shades of orange, yellow, and green, matching the era's love of bold kitchen decor, and families used them daily for juice, iced tea, and lemonade. Kids grabbed them from the fridge, pouring glasses with a confidence that came from knowing these pitchers were practically unbreakable. Parents loved them because they survived drops, dishwashers, and household chaos without cracking. What nobody understood was that the hard plastic contained bisphenol A, a chemical that leached into liquids, especially when the pitcher sat in sunlight or was washed in hot water. Every cold drink poured from those containers carried traces of a compound later linked to hormonal disruption. Children were the most vulnerable, drinking from these pitchers multiple times daily without anyone suspecting a thing. When regulators issued bans on BPA in food containers, families were shocked to learn their most trusted kitchen staple had been quietly compromising the drinks they served with such care. Bartles and Jamie's wine cooler commercials featured two elderly gentlemen sitting on a porch, delivering deadpan monologues that ended with a sincere thank you for the viewer's support. Frank Bartles and Ed Jamies were fictional characters played by actors, but their folksy charm felt so genuine that millions of Americans believed they were real winemakers running a small family operation. The ads worked because they rejected everything loud and flashy about 1980s advertising. Instead of screaming pitchmen or flashy graphics, viewers got two quiet old men in flannel shirts talking about fruit flavors like they were discussing the weather. The contrast was so striking that people actually paid attention. Wine coolers became the drink of choice for an entire generation of young adults who wanted something sweeter than beer but fancier than soda. The campaign ran for years, and each new commercial followed the same gentle formula. Frank did most of the talking while Ed sat silently beside him, occasionally nodding. Audiences loved the simplicity and the warmth that radiated from every understated frame. It proved that sometimes the softest voice in the room gets heard the loudest. Fighting over who got to hand out the presents was one of the fiercest battles of Christmas morning, and every 80s kid understood the stakes involved. the person who controlled the present pile had ultimate power, deciding the order, the pacing, and the level of suspense everyone else had to endure. Some families rotated the honor each year, while others let the youngest take charge, but that did not stop siblings from lobbying hard the moment their feet hit the living room floor. The chosen one would kneel beside the tree like a tiny monarch, reading names aloud with exaggerated importance, sometimes holding a gift just long enough to drive everyone crazy. Of course, accusations of favoritism flew constantly, with someone always claiming the distributor gave themselves the biggest boxes first or handed out the boring gifts to rivals while saving the good ones. Parents tried to keep the peace, but honestly, they were just as eager to see what was inside each package. The present hander held the rhythm of the entire morning, and that small responsibility felt enormous when you were 7 years old and surrounded by wrapping paper chaos. WKRP in Cincinnati gave audiences a hilarious inside look at a struggling radio station, and it became one of the smartest comedies of the 1970s. The humor came from the clash of personalities: the earnest but clueless station manager, the eccentric disc jockeys, the glamorous receptionist, and the ever-patient newsman who seemed constantly exasperated by the circus around him. The station was supposed to play rock music, but half the time no one knew what they were doing. Equipment failed, promotions went wrong, and the staff stumbled from one disaster to the next, often leaving listeners in stitches. One of the show's most famous episodes involved a Thanksgiving promotion gone horribly wrong, with live turkeys being dropped from a helicopter. An idea so ridiculous that it cemented the show's place in sitcom history. But WKRP also had heart. For audiences, it was both a laugh and a reflection of the real changes happening in radio and pop culture at the time. What made WKRP in Cincinnati unforgettable was its balance of goofy humor with just enough truth to make you nod and laugh at the same time. You know the feeling, right? You have eaten to the point where you can barely look at the plate and think to yourself, "Why did I do this?" Alka-Seltzer's, "I can't believe I ate the whole thing."
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
Oh, well, I heard that before.
Commercial was just the kind of appeal that cracked that nerve. It didn't just sell antacids, it made us laugh at our own gluttony. One of the ads was a man complaining about how much he ate while his wife looked at him from the side. Here came Alka-Seltzer, the effervescent remedy for the crime committed against the kitchen. The tagline became so famous that it became a part of the Pop Culture Hall of Fame. Well, my dad uses it to this very day during the Thanksgiving celebration. Were you aware that this particular campaign is considered to be one of the most effective in the history of advertising? It was first aired in 1972, and the company's sales of Alka-Seltzer multiplied 2 times. It turned into a phrase for overindulging in food and showed that nothing sells like comedy and relatability. Each time I come across those tiny effervescent tablets, this advert pops into my mind. It is a message of hope for the stomach. No matter how much pie one takes, there is always a possibility. Alka-Seltzer didn't just sell a product. It gave us a catchphrase for life's tastiest mistakes. If Big Tobacco manipulated the regulators, one liquor company allegedly tried to manipulate the viewer's unconscious mind. In 1973, researcher Wilson Bryan Key published Subliminal Seduction, claiming that a Gilbey's London Dry Gin print ad contained a hidden word spelled out in the ice cubes, a word tied to physical desire. The letters were invisible at a casual glance, but once pointed out, they became impossible to unsee. Gilbey's denied everything. The FTC investigated but took no action, partly because proving intent was impossible. Key's book sold millions of copies, and suddenly every American was squinting at ice cubes in liquor ads. Modern neuroscience has added a strange wrinkle. MRI studies show that emotionally charged images presented below conscious perception do activate the amygdala, influencing emotional responses without the viewer's awareness. Whether the Gilbey's ad was deliberate remains debated, but the fear behind the controversy turned out to be scientifically grounded. If you wanted a sitcom that could make you laugh and still surprise you, Night Court was it. Set in a Manhattan courtroom that never slept, the show revolved around the unflappable Judge Harry Stone, a magic-loving, jazz-listening oddball who somehow kept order among the chaos. Every night brought in a parade of bizarre defendants, protesters, pranksters, and plenty of repeat offenders, and an even more eccentric crew of lawyers and clerks. The humor was sharp, rapid-fire, and often surreal, but the show's secret weapon was its warmth. Amid the slapstick and one-liners, Night Court showed compassion for the strange, the lost, and the misunderstood. The mix of courtroom antics and human stories made it stand out from the typical workplace sitcom. The cast chemistry, especially between Harry Anderson, John Larroquette, and Marky Post, kept the show alive for nearly a decade. It was unpredictable, heartfelt, and often ahead of its time in addressing real social issues under layers of absurd comedy. When the gavel finally dropped in 1992, Night Court had already earned its spot as one of the most uniquely funny and oddly touching shows of the 1980s. It cost nothing to say one sentence, but it made Calvin Klein a fortune. In 1980, 15-year-old Brooke Shields looked into Richard Avedon's camera and delivered a line that would define boundary-free advertising for a decade. "You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing." CBS and ABC refused to air the spot. Reverend Donald Wildman of the National Federation for Decency called for a nationwide boycott, accusing the brand of exploiting a minor for profit. Shields later told Vogue she did not understand the innuendo at the time and was blindsided by the backlash. None of it mattered to the bottom line. Klein moved over 200,000 pairs of jeans in a single week. Shields was dropped after 1 year, not because of the scandal, but because the designer wanted his name on the product, not hers. The commercial that would trigger an immediate FTC investigation today was, in 1980, just another ad buy. Sanford and Son brought laughter roaring out of living rooms with a style that felt fresh, raw, and completely unapologetic. Red Fox played Fred Sanford with a comedic sharpness that cut through every scene, delivering jokes that pushed the boundaries of what network television allowed. The junkyard setting, the father and son bickering, and the constant insults flying between characters made it feel like you were eavesdropping on a real family argument. The humor was fast, biting, and aimed at everyone within earshot. Some of the jokes leaned heavily on stereotypes, language, and situations that modern audiences would find uncomfortable at best. But at the time, it was groundbreaking, showing Black family life in a way prime time had rarely attempted before. The show gave Red Fox a platform to bring his nightclub-style humor to mainstream America, and audiences responded with loyalty that kept it running for years. Today, those same jokes feel jarring, caught between appreciation for the show's cultural impact and discomfort with how some of its comedy has aged. Reruns exist in edited forms or with warnings attached, a reminder that what made people laugh then often makes them wince now. Punky Brewster's Christmas episodes captured everything people loved about the scrappy orphan and her found family, delivering holiday warmth through mismatched outfits and a sincere belief that love could conquer anything. Punky faced Christmas challenges ranging from financial struggles to worrying about friends in need. The show never shied away from heavy topics, treating young viewers with respect while keeping things fun and accessible. Soleil Moon Frye brought such genuine energy that even the corniest holiday lessons landed with real impact. Episodes involved Punky organizing community efforts, convincing Henry to embrace the season, or helping classmates facing harder circumstances. The humor came from character moments and the kind of heartfelt sincerity that only worked because everyone involved committed completely. Parents found themselves surprisingly moved by stories about an orphan finding joy in small miracles. The show understood that Christmas meant different things to different families, and Punky's determination to make the holiday special resonated deeply. Those episodes remain touchstones for anyone who grew up believing kindness and creativity could solve almost anything. The Energizer Bunny became an advertising phenomenon by doing something brilliantly simple: interrupting fake commercials with a drumming pink rabbit that just kept going and going. These parody ads pretended to sell everything from wine coolers to hemorrhoid cream before the bunny crashed through, batteries blazing. The humor was layered and self-aware, poking fun at advertising itself while being one of the most effective ad campaigns of the decade. Kids loved the unexpected chaos, parents appreciated the clever writing, and everyone remembered the bunny long after forgetting what batteries he was selling. The fake commercials were often funnier than real ones, satirizing pharmaceutical ads, perfume spots, and infomercials with pitch-perfect absurdity. But some parody commercials pushed boundaries that regulators deemed inappropriate. Certain spoofed products touched on adult themes, and the line between satire and endorsement became blurry enough to draw complaints. A handful of edgier spots were pulled from rotation, making them rare treasures of 80s advertising. Those banned versions still circulate among collectors who remember when the bunny mocked everything. Beer commercials during daytime family programming were a familiar sight in the 1980s, slipping between cartoons, sporting events, and holiday specials as if alcohol belonged alongside everything families watched. These ads featured laughing friends, summer barbecues, and celebrations that made drinking look like the natural reward for a day well spent. Children absorbed these messages alongside cereal jingles and toy promotions, learning to associate beer brands with happiness before understanding what alcohol did. Parents rarely noticed how often these commercials appeared during hours meant for young viewers, because the line between adult and family content barely existed. Nobody questioned why a product meant for adults was marketed heavily when children were watching. The ads normalized drinking in ways that shaped attitudes for an entire generation. When advocacy groups pushed for restrictions, networks slowly moved alcohol advertising to later time slots. Today, strict guidelines prevent beer commercials from airing during children's programming. But the memories of those sunny ads still linger, a reminder that advertising once reached audiences it was never supposed to influence.
Dallas, the primetime soap opera that defined the genre in the late 70s and 80s, brought viewers into the tumultuous lives of the Ewing family, oil magnates living in South Fork Ranch. The series, which premiered in 1978, became a cultural phenomenon with its blend of wealth, power, and family drama, epitomized by the Who Shot JR episode. Despite its global popularity, Dallas ended in 1991 as ratings declined and storylines began to stretch credibility. This decline was due in part to the natural conclusion of narrative arcs and the evolving tastes of its audience, signaling a timely closure to its epic saga. Nevertheless, Dallas remains iconic, celebrated for its storytelling, complex characters, and as a vivid portrayal of the oil industry's opulence and intrigue, maintaining its status as a landmark in television history.
Before anyone worried about what kids were breathing in science class, some schools had already solved a different problem by giving students a dedicated place to inhale something worse. If you attended high school in the early 1980s, your campus may have had a designated smoking area where students could light a cigarette between classes without fear of detention. At Cheyenne East High in Wyoming, the class of 1983 remembered multiple spots, including a courtyard by the cafeteria and a path from the boys' locker room to the parking lot. In Minnesota, one district installed a school-sanctioned smoking bathroom, reasoning it was better to contain the habit than let students destroy every lavatory in the building. Most of these smokers were 14 to 18 years old. By September of 1981, districts started reversing course, stationing police near campuses to ticket underage smokers. For years before that, lighting up at school was not rebellion, it was infrastructure. Cap guns with realistic metal finishes were staples of the 1960s toy aisle, part of a long tradition of cowboy and outlaw roleplay. They looked and felt almost identical to real pistols, right down to the weight of the metal frames. Kids strapped them into holsters, spun them on their fingers, and staged epic shootouts in the backyard. The appeal was obvious. They felt grown-up, tough, and dramatic. But the danger was equally obvious. Police officers and bystanders often mistook them for real firearms, leading to countless close calls and tragic misunderstandings. Kids carried them openly in public, sometimes tucking them into waistbands or waving them on playgrounds, not realizing how convincing they looked. Add in the caps themselves, which made real pops and smoke, and you had toys nearly indistinguishable from live weapons. Parents shrugged it off, but authorities began to raise alarms. Reports of accidents and mistaken identities piled up until regulations demanded toy guns be painted bright colors or have orange tips. The realistic metal finish was banned, leaving behind a strange mix of nostalgia and regret. Kids remembered the backyard duels fondly, but adults came to see them as a chilling reminder of just how unsafe the line between toy and reality could be. Ceramic crockpots glazed with lead-based paint were some of the most trusted kitchen companions in the 1970s, simmering stews, soups, and casseroles for hours while families went about their day. The pots came in gorgeous, earthy tones: harvest gold, avocado green, and burnt orange, colors so perfectly 70s they practically came with a shag carpet warranty. People loved how the thick ceramic held heat evenly and made every meal taste like it had been cooking since morning. What nobody realized was that the beautiful glazes contained lead, and as the crockpot heated for hours, that lead slowly leached into the food inside. Families served these meals to children and guests without concern because the pot looked wholesome and harmless. The longer the food cooked, the more lead seeped in, turning a convenience into a quiet contamination source on the counter. When health studies connected lead-glazed cookware to dangerous exposure levels, regulators banned the formulas and forced manufacturers to reformulate. It is unsettling to think that the crockpot that made your grandmother's famous chili carried a risk nobody tasted or suspected until science intervened decades later. California Raisins claymation commercials were the kind of bizarre advertising gamble that should have failed immediately, and yet somehow became one of the most successful campaigns of the entire decade. The concept was genuinely absurd. A group of wrinkled, dancing, dried grapes singing Motown classics while encouraging children to eat healthier snacks. The animation was chunky. The raisins themselves looked like tiny, shriveled old men, and the idea of making fruit cools seemed laughable on paper. But the moment those little clay figures started swaying to "I Heard It Through the Grapevine," something clicked with audiences in a way nobody predicted. Kids begged their parents for raisin boxes just to feel connected to the commercials, and adults found themselves humming the songs during commutes. The California Raisin Advisory Board watched in amazement as sales climbed and merchandise flew off shelves. There were toys, lunchboxes, albums, and even a Saturday morning cartoon series. It was one of those rare moments where advertising became genuine entertainment, proving that sometimes the strangest ideas are the ones that stick with people forever. Ripping through wrapping paper like a tornado was the only acceptable method for opening presents in the 1980s, and no one had time for patience or delicacy. The moment a gift landed in your hands, your fingers found the first available edge and tore with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for wild animals discovering prey after a long winter. Sheets of paper flew across the living room, boughs launched into the air, and ribbons wrapped around wrists like trophies of destruction. Parents sometimes tried to slow things down, asking kids to wait so they could snap a photograph or see what everyone received. But those requests rarely survived contact with actual children holding unopened presents. The floor disappeared beneath layers of shredded wrapping, and boxes piled up faster than anyone could track. Some families had one child who carefully peeled tape and folded paper for reuse, but that kid was usually treated like an alien visitor from a planet with no Christmas spirit whatsoever. The rest of us understood the assignment clearly: maximum speed, maximum chaos, and absolutely no regard for the craftsmanship of the wrapping job. Barney Miller was not a typical police show. Instead of car chases or crime-solving action, the sitcom took place almost entirely inside a New York City precinct office. The humor came from the characters, not the cases. Captain Barney Miller himself was calm, patient, and often the only voice of reason in a room full of eccentrics. His detectives each brought their own quirks: the laid-back Detective Harris, the perpetually tired Yamana, the grumpy Wojciechowicz, and many others who kept the station buzzing with personality. What made the show special was its ability to blend laughs with a sense of humanity. Viewers did not just laugh at them, they cared about them. Barney Miller showed that even in a tough, gritty city like New York, humor was everywhere if you looked closely enough. While many sitcoms went for big punchlines, Barney Miller thrived on small, character-driven moments that revealed both flaws and warmth. It was quirky, clever, and quietly brilliant, which is why it has never fully disappeared from memory. Picture this: a hill, a rainbow of people with glasses full of Coke, and a tune so irresistible that it made the world think that a soda can bring everyone together. The Coca-Cola commercial that went on air in 1971, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke," was not just a commercial, but was a phenomenon.
I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company.
It's like the anthem for anybody who has ever drunk a Coke and then thought to himself, "You know what this could do? It could solve world peace." The ad had a group of singers singing about harmony and happiness, all holding bottles of the soft drink. Fun fact, the song was so successful that it was released as a single and even reached the charts on the Billboard. My mom had it on vinyl, and I'm sure she still does, though I haven't seen it in years. Here's the kicker: it almost didn't happen. Rain nearly derailed the shoot in Italy, but when the sun was out, the impossible seemed possible. Coca-Cola got it right on the head with this one. They touched on something that is timeless. It makes me feel like I want to get a Coke, invite my friends, and sing about whatever. The jingle is no longer aired, but the message it sought to pass on to the public is timeless. Let's all just chill with a Coke. Is it even possible to drink soda if you don't hum this tune? A family board game called Husker Du ran television ads in the early 70s that looked perfectly innocent. Kids matched tiles, parents watched, the announcer encouraged everyone to buy. But hidden in the footage were single frames of text flashing too fast for the conscious mind. The message read, "Get it." Viewers sensed something felt off, and complaints reached the FCC. Investigators confirmed that Premium Corporation of America had embedded subliminal commands into the broadcast. An executive later admitted responsibility. The FCC declared in 1973 that subliminal techniques were contrary to the public interest, banning the practice from American airwaves. Decades later, brain imaging studies validated the concern. Images presented below conscious awareness still activate emotional processing centers and shape preference, even when the viewer has no idea anything was shown. Mama's Family took its roots from a sketch on The Carol Burnett Show and turned it into a full-blown sitcom about a sharp-tongued matriarch named Thelma Harper. Played by Vicki Lawrence, Mama was a walking storm of sarcasm, stubbornness, and slapstick humor. Living in small-town America with her eccentric relatives, she dealt with everyday chaos in ways only she could, by yelling, fussing, and ultimately loving her family through it all. The show combined quick one-liners, outrageous misunderstandings, and over-the-top Southern charm. Every argument felt like a comedy showdown, with Mama always getting the last word. Despite its wild tone, Mama's Family had a genuine heart. Beneath the snark and shouting was a relatable story about families sticking together through thick and thin. It captured small-town life in all its messy glory, funny, loud, and endlessly entertaining. Vicki Lawrence's performance anchored it all, giving Mama just enough warmth to balance the sass. Decades later, her blue dress and gray wig remain iconic symbols of 1980s sitcom gold. They called them rainbow diet pills because of their bright, candy-like colors, and for decades they were marketed as a simple solution for weight loss. What the ads left out was that the pills combined amphetamines with diuretics, laxatives, thyroid hormones, and barbiturates, a chemical cocktail that forced the body into shedding weight at any cost. Dispensing diet doctors built fortunes on the practice, one paying $71 for 100,000 amphetamine tablets and reselling them for $12,000. By 1970, roughly 10 million Americans were taking some form of prescription stimulant. The FDA pulled the original pills after dozens of deaths, but 80s television continued running weight loss ads with fabricated before and after photos and paid performers posing as satisfied customers. The FTC found that nearly 40% of those ads contained claims that were almost certainly false. Maude was designed to provoke, and it succeeded in ways that still echo through television history. B. Arthur played the title character with a sharpness that cut through every controversy the writers threw her way, from abortion to depression to political battles that felt electric at the time. The show tackled subjects other programs would not touch, but it did so with a bluntness that sometimes landed harder than intended. Maude's opinions came fast and unfiltered, sometimes alienating audiences who were not ready to hear a woman speak with such uncompromising force. The show pushed conversations forward, but some of its approaches to race, gender, and social issues used shortcuts that modern viewers find clumsy or dated. Supporting characters sometimes existed primarily to be corrected or mocked, their viewpoints treated as punchlines rather than perspectives worth engaging. At the time, Maude was hailed as fearless, a show willing to say what others would not. Today, some of that fearlessness looks different, a reminder that progress often leaves footprints that later generations view with complicated feelings. The facts of life. Christmas episodes brought the Eastland Academy girls together for holiday adventures filled with drama, secret Santas, and life lessons wrapped in sisterhood. The show excelled at balancing comedic moments with genuine emotional depth. Blair, Joe, Natalie, and Tootie faced everything from financial worries about gift-giving to deeper questions about what the holidays meant for young women away from their families. Mrs. Garrett provided wisdom, warmth, and maternal guidance that anchored every storyline. Holiday episodes involved the girls planning events, resolving conflicts, or helping community members in need. The humor came from personality clashes and comedic timing the cast had perfected over seasons of working together. Beneath the laughs, these episodes touched on loneliness, family expectations, and complicated feelings surrounding holidays for teenagers growing up. The show treated its young audience with respect, never dumbing down emotional content while still keeping things entertaining. Those Christmas episodes became comfort viewing for generations who found themselves needing reminders about friendship and generosity during the holiday season. High Karate aftershave commercials promised something no grooming product had ever dared guarantee, that wearing this cologne would make men so irresistible they would need self-defense training to fend off admirers. The ads showed ordinary guys splashing on the aftershave and immediately being tackled, grabbed, and chased by beautiful women who could not control their desire. Each commercial ended with the absurd punchline, warning viewers to be careful because High Karate was simply too powerful. Kids found the concept hilarious, watching grown men karate chop through crowds of swooning women like action heroes in a perfume commercial. Parents chuckled at the exaggerated premise, recognizing harmless fun that nobody could take seriously. The humor worked because it leaned so hard into the ridiculous that it became a parody of masculine fantasies. But as advertising standards evolved, regulators grew uncomfortable with the implication that women would lose self-control around men wearing the right scent. The commercials were quietly retired and High Karate faded into obscurity. Today, those ads feel like relics of a time when absurd gender dynamics could be played for laughs. The tanning bed ads promoting safe sun alternatives ran frequently in the 1980s, promising golden skin without the risks of outdoor exposure. These commercials featured glowing models stepping out of sleek machines, looking bronzed, healthy, and impossibly confident. The message was clear. Tanning beds offered control, convenience, and beauty on demand. Salons marketed themselves as wellness destinations, and families saw nothing wrong with teenagers booking sessions before prom. Parents believed the advertisements because they seemed scientific, using words like controlled UV exposure that made artificial tanning sound medicinal. Nobody imagined these machines could damage skin faster than the sun they claimed to replace. When researchers linked tanning beds to dramatically increase skin cancer risks, the advertising landscape shifted overnight. Regulators banned claims of safety and health benefits that had filled these commercials. The sleek tanning bed became a symbol of danger rather than beauty. Today, it is chilling to think how many people trusted ads promising glow without consequence, unaware that the machines carried risks nobody mentioned until it was too late.
The Golden Girls, debuting in 1985, redefined television's portrayal of older women, following four friends sharing a home in Miami. Their golden years were filled with humor and discussions on topics often considered taboo, such as aging and sexuality, making the show pioneering for its focus on senior citizens. The chemistry among Dorothy, Blanche, Rose, and Sophia, along with their iconic kitchen table discussions, made for unforgettable television. The series concluded in 1992 as the storylines naturally reached their conclusion, allowing its stars to explore new opportunities. This decision marked a respectful and timely end to the show, acknowledging the narrative's full exploration. Its legacy continues, celebrated for its groundbreaking approach, timeless humor, and the way it showcased the enduring power of friendship, leaving a lasting impact on audiences and the television landscape.
The metal slide at your school was a sheet of polished steel bolted to a frame standing 10 or 12 feet tall, anchored directly into concrete and completely exposed to the sun. By mid-afternoon in any state south of Ohio, that surface became a griddle. Temperatures on sun-baked steel could reach over 150 degrees, hot enough to cause contact burns on the backs of bare legs in seconds. Kids invented their own workarounds. They poured water down the chute, slid on wax paper stolen from lunchboxes, or simply launched themselves off the sides when the heat became unbearable. There were no plastic alternatives, no shade structures, and no heat-reducing coatings. The Consumer Product Safety Commission pushed for design changes, but most schools did not swap steel for molded plastic until the late 1990s. Wham-O Super Elastic Bubble Plastic was one of the weirdest toys of the 1960s and one of the most dangerous. It came in little tubes of colorful goo that kids squeezed onto the ends of plastic straws. From there, you blew into the straw and the goo expanded into balloon-like bubbles that looked magical. Unlike regular balloons, these were stretchy, translucent, and could be shaped into wild forms. But there was a problem, a dangerous one. The goo contained toxic chemicals, including polyvinyl acetate, and blowing through the straw meant kids were inhaling noxious fumes directly into their lungs. It smelled terrible, left sticky residue everywhere, and more than one kid ended up with a headache after a bubble-blowing session. Parents quickly realized this was not your average harmless balloon toy. The bubbles themselves were fragile, often popping into messy shards of goo that stuck to hair, skin, and clothing. Still, it was hilariously fun at the time. Kids loved making giant, wobbly blobs, even as parents coughed from the fumes filling the living room. Eventually, health officials raised alarms, and Wham-O had to phase it out. Today, Super Elastic Bubble Plastic lives on in memory as both funny and frightening, the kind of toy that made kids laugh and adults wonder how it was ever allowed on store shelves. Aluminum ice trays treated with cadmium plating looked sleek and modern inside every 1970s freezer, their shiny finish reflecting the light like tiny mirrors waiting to be cracked open. People loved them because they froze water quickly, popped out cubes cleanly, and felt sturdier than the flimsy plastic trays on store shelves. The satisfying pull of the metal lever that loosened the cubes was a kitchen ritual, and kids fought over who got to do it because the cracking sound felt rewarding. What nobody knew was that the smooth coating came from cadmium, a heavy metal that slowly flaked off with each freeze and thaw cycle. Those flakes mixed into the ice, dissolved into drinks, and ended up in the glasses of everyone in the family. Children drank lemonade, adults sipped cocktails, and holiday punch bowls sparkled with cubes carrying invisible contamination. Researchers discovered that cadmium damaged kidneys, weakened bones, and accumulated in the body over time. When the bans arrived, families were stunned that their trusty trays had been quietly poisoning them with every perfectly popped cube. It feels surreal knowing that frozen water once carried a danger nobody imagined. Mr. T cereal commercials turned breakfast into a battleground where toughness and nutrition collided in the most absurd way possible. The cereal itself was nothing special, just sweetened corn puffs, shaped vaguely like the letter T, but the advertising transformed it into something unforgettable. Mr. T, fresh from his fame on the A-Team and Rocky III, appeared on screen with his signature mohawk, gold chains, and a scowl that suggested he took breakfast more seriously than most people took their careers. He shouted about the cereal with such intensity that children watching Saturday morning cartoons either laughed hysterically or hid behind their parents in fear. The commercials featured him breaking through walls, lifting weights, and generally behaving as though eating cereal was a matter of life and death. Parents bought the boxes just to see what all the noise was about, and kids devoured the sugary contents while pretending they too were tough enough to wear gold chains to the playground. The cereal itself did not last long on shelves, but the memory of Mr. T screaming about breakfast remains one of the strangest marketing decisions of the entire decade. The elaborate fake sleep performance when parents checked on you was an Oscar-worthy act every 80s kid perfected without a single rehearsal. You heard the bedroom door creak open, felt the hallway light spill across your blanket, and immediately went completely still. Your breathing became slow, exaggerated, almost cartoonishly relaxed, even though your heart was pounding so hard you were sure they could hear it from the doorway. Some kids added a light snore, a gentle sigh, or a dramatic roll to really sell the illusion. The goal was simple: convince them you were sound asleep so they would go back to bed and eventually allow the morning madness to begin. Parents, of course, knew exactly what was happening. They had done the same thing decades earlier, standing in the same doorways, pulling the same tricks on their own parents. But everyone played along, honoring the unspoken tradition of pretending that children could actually sleep on Christmas Eve. When the door finally closed and you heard their footsteps retreat, you exhaled like you had just survived a spy mission, then went right back to staring at the ceiling, waiting for dawn. Mary Hartman. Mary Hartman was unlike anything else on television in the 1970s. It looked like a soap opera at first glance, but it was twisted in the strangest and funniest ways possible. She played a housewife trapped in the dull routines of suburban life, but the series constantly spun the ordinary into the absurd. Scenes about clogged drains, broken appliances, or awkward neighborhood conversations would suddenly escalate into darkly hilarious territory. The show aired daily, 5 nights a week, which gave it the same addictive quality as a soap opera, but with comedy that pushed boundaries. The repetition of Mary's name in the title became part of the joke. It was monotonous, much like the routines the show mocked. People either loved it or hated it, but no one could forget it. For fans, it became a cult classic that perfectly captured the weird underbelly of the American dream. Looking back, it is easy to see why Mary Hartman stood out as one of the strangest and funniest experiments of its era. Maypo commercials were just silly and fun, which is exactly what made them so great. Marky, a boy in an animated commercial who does not want to take his oatmeal, wakes up to the maple-flavored Maypo. What happens next? He screams like a baby, "I want my Maypo!" as if that is the ultimate goal in life.
I want my Maypo!
Children all over America participated in it, and parents either giggled or cringed. My mom once put Maypo on my bowl of oatmeal when I refused to take my meal as a kid. It worked. I mean, who can resist maple-flavored mush? Maypo was the breakfast cereal that was popular in the 60s as a cereal children enjoyed while parents saw it as a healthy cereal for the family. The advertisements were prophetic in a way that used humor and animation to cement the brand into the public's consciousness. What you probably did not know is that Maypo was created in 1953 by the Maltex Corporation. They introduced maple sugar to the cereal range and made breakfast out of an ordinary meal into something special. Sadly, Maypo was off the air by the 80s, but the commercials remain with anyone who watched Saturday morning cartoons. This simple slogan, "I want my Maypo," became as famous as the cereal itself. Today, if you are lucky enough to get your hands on a box, please do not shout out loud about it. No, wait, shout it. It's the Maypo way. Between 1967 and 1970, the FCC's Fairness Doctrine forced American networks to air free anti-smoking spots alongside cigarette commercials. These were not gentle reminders. They showed the tar accumulation from a single pack, the slow narrowing of airways that no filter could prevent. A Marlboro cowboy would appear during a break, and minutes later, viewers saw what that smoke did to human tissue. The contrast was brutal, and smoking dropped roughly 7% in 3 years. Internal memos from Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds confirmed that executives tracked every percentage point and understood the counter ads were winning. When the broadcast ban took effect in 1971, the fairness doctrine no longer applied to cigarettes. The anti-smoking PSAs vanished overnight. Consumption climbed almost immediately. The most effective public health campaign in American television history was shut down not by the tobacco industry directly, but by the regulation designed to defeat it. The Facts of Life began as a simple spin-off of Different Strokes, but it grew into something much more. Set in a girls' boarding school, it followed a group of teens learning about friendship, mistakes, and growing up under the guidance of their patient housemother, Mrs. Garrett. What made the show special was how it blended humor with honesty. Sure, it had plenty of silly moments, food fights, crushes, and awkward dances, but it also tackled topics most sitcoms avoided. The girls dealt with peer pressure, body image, and the challenge of finding their place in the world. Yet through it all, The Facts of Life remained lighthearted and hopeful. Each episode felt like a gentle lesson wrapped in laughter, the kind of comfort television that families could watch together without worry. By the time it ended in 1988, viewers had grown up alongside Blair, Joe, Natalie, and Tootie. It proved that a show didn't need wild gimmicks to be funny, just heart, humor, and a reminder that you really do take the good, you take the bad. Bud Light debuted Spuds MacKenzie during Super Bowl 21 in 1987, and within months, over 200 officially licensed products flooded the market, including plush stuffed animals that ended up in kids' bedrooms across America. The real dog was a female bull terrier named Honey Tree Evil Eye from North Riverside, Illinois. Senator Strom Thurmond stood on the Senate floor holding a Spuds plush, accusing Anheuser-Busch of using the mascot to glamorize drinking for kids. Mothers Against Drunk Driving filed their own accusations. Schools banned students from wearing Spuds apparel because it carried a beer brand logo. Christmas ads featuring the dog dressed as Santa were pulled in Ohio, where state law prohibited alcohol advertising using Santa's likeness. Bud Light credited the campaign with a 20% sales boost, but retired the mascot in 1989. The Gong Show was pure chaos packaged as entertainment, a variety show where amateur performers competed for approval from celebrity judges who could gong them off stage at any moment. The acts ranged from genuinely talented to deliberately absurd, and the humor often came from mocking the contestants rather than celebrating them. Host Chuck Barris reveled in the madness, encouraging performances that pushed taste into territory that made network executives nervous. Some acts featured costumes and routines that leaned heavily on racial caricatures, suggestive material, and humor that bordered on cruelty disguised as fun. The audience laughed at people failing spectacularly, cheering when the gong silenced someone mid-performance. It was a precursor to reality television, but with fewer guardrails and far less concern for the dignity of those on stage. Modern viewers looking back see entertainment that often punched down rather than up, finding laughs and embarrassment rather than skill. The show reflected an era where humiliation was considered harmless fun, a notion that has not survived the decades well. Different Strokes. Holiday specials turned the Park Avenue penthouse into a stage for Christmas lessons delivered through sitcom misunderstandings and Arnold's perfectly timed catchphrases. The show mixed humor with social commentary, and holiday episodes balanced both sides with varying degrees of success. Arnold and Willis navigated Christmas with adoptive father Philip Drummond, learning lessons about generosity, family, and the true meaning of the season. Gary Coleman's delivery transformed predictable setups into memorable moments, his expressive face selling jokes that might have fallen flat with any other performer. Episodes featured gift mix-ups, unexpected visitors, and heartfelt reconciliations between laugh track cues. The show understood its audience, kids who wanted comedy and parents who appreciated messages about acceptance. Christmas specials pushed sentimentality higher, wrapping everything in tinsel and good intentions. Those holiday episodes captured an era of television that believed strongly in teaching through entertainment. Arnold asking what people were talking about during Christmas dinner became its own kind of tradition. Jovan Musk commercials in the 1980s answered a question nobody had technically asked, but everyone secretly wondered about. The ads featured close-up shots of skin, whispered voiceovers, and slow-motion scenes that felt like someone wandered into a steamy foreign film. The tagline promised wearing the cologne would unlock something primal, delivered with sensuality that made living rooms feel awkward when the whole family was watching. Parents shifted uncomfortably, kids giggled without understanding why, and the product flew off shelves despite making everyone embarrassed. The humor came from how seriously the ads took themselves, treating a drugstore cologne like a potion capable of transforming ordinary people into objects of desire. Every frame dripped with exaggerated passion, every whisper promised forbidden excitement. But as standards for television advertising tightened, these overtly suggestive commercials became impossible to air during family programming. Regulators decided the imagery was too explicit for general audiences, and Jovan had to tone down dramatically. Those commercials feel like time capsules of an era when selling cologne meant selling fantasy. Asbestos product commercials for home improvement aired regularly in the early 1980s, promoting insulation, roofing materials, and fireproofing solutions that promised safety and durability. These ads featured confident homeowners tackling weekend projects with products marketed as the smartest choice for protecting families. Hardware stores stocked the materials prominently, and contractors recommended them without hesitation. The commercials used reassuring language about strength and longevity, never mentioning what would happen when the fibers came loose. Families trusted these products because they seemed practical, affordable, and endorsed by experts appearing on screen with friendly smiles. Nobody imagined that the same material protecting their attic could slowly poison the air they breathed. When the connection between asbestos and deadly lung diseases became undeniable, regulators moved swiftly to ban both the products and their advertising. Homes across the country still contain materials installed during those trusting years. Today, it is haunting to watch old footage of these commercials, knowing the cheerful promises masked one of the deadliest hazards ever sold to families.
Hill Street Blues transformed the police drama genre with its gritty realism and ensemble cast, offering viewers a nuanced glimpse into the lives of officers and detectives in an unnamed city's precinct. Its 1981 premiere brought innovative storytelling techniques, including handheld cameras and serialized narratives, which contributed to a more immersive and realistic viewing experience. The show tackled social issues, depicted the complexities of urban life, and explored the moral and ethical dilemmas faced by law enforcement, setting it apart from its predecessors. It concluded in 1987, having profoundly influenced television drama. The series ended as it sought to maintain the high quality and integrity of its storytelling, recognizing that it had achieved what it set out to do. Hill Street Blues is remembered for elevating the police drama genre, leaving a legacy that continues to impact television storytelling, making it a benchmark for narrative depth and character development in the genre.
When a glass thermometer broke in a 1980s science classroom, the lesson stopped and something far more interesting began. Mercury scattered across the lab table in tiny silver beads that rolled and merged when you pushed them together. Students poked the liquid metal with pencils, corralled it with index cards, and sometimes cupped it in the palms of their hands. Teachers treated it as a minor inconvenience. Someone wiped the table with a paper towel and class resumed. What nobody mentioned was that mercury vaporizes at room temperature into an invisible, odorless gas that accumulates in enclosed spaces. Between 2002 and 2006, American Poison Control Centers received over 37,000 calls about children exposed to mercury, and more than 30,000 of those involved broken thermometers. A 2004 case in New Jersey found roughly 100 children exposed at a daycare center built inside a former thermometer factory. Atomic energy lab kits were marketed in the 1960s as the ultimate science toy, a way for kids to feel like miniature physicists. The box included everything you needed: a cloud chamber, Geiger counter, uranium ore samples, and even instructions for conducting atomic experiments at home. At the time, it sounded futuristic, a symbol of progress and the atomic age. Parents proudly bought them, thinking they were giving their kids a head start on science. What they were really doing was handing over a toy that contained actual radioactive material. Yes, the kit genuinely shipped with trace amounts of uranium ore, because in the 1960s, nobody blinked twice at letting kids tinker with radiation in the basement. The safety warnings were minimal, buried in fine print, and kids handled glowing rocks without gloves, goggles, or any real protection. Looking back, it is astonishing these kits were sold in department stores right alongside toy trains and dolls. Teachers, parents, and even the companies themselves framed it as educational, but in hindsight, it was reckless at best. Still, for the kids who had one, there was something unforgettable about watching the Geiger counter click and spark as it passed over the samples. It was science class mixed with danger, the kind of thrill that made the 1960s unique. Eventually, public concern grew, and these kits were pulled from shelves, leaving behind one of the most shocking examples of what once passed for a toy. Today, the Atomic Energy Lab is remembered as both hilarious and horrifying, a banned relic of the atomic craze that proves just how wild the decade really was. Creepy pressure cookers without safety release valves were the ticking time bombs of the 1970s kitchen, and somehow every family treated them like perfectly normal appliances. These heavy-lidded pots sealed shut with a clamp that locked in steam until pressure built high enough to cook dried beans in minutes. The problem was breathtakingly simple. If pressure climbed too high with no valve to release it, the lid could launch off the pot like a metal disc aimed at the ceiling. Kitchens across the country experienced explosions that sent boiling food, steam, and shrapnel in every direction, burning anyone standing nearby. Parents told stories about the time the cooker blew as if it were a funny anecdote, then put the lid back on and used it again the following week. Kids learned to leave the room when the pot started hissing, not because anyone explained the danger, but because the sound alone was terrifying enough to drive them out. When regulators demanded mandatory safety valves, the old models were banned from sale. Today, modern pressure cookers have multiple fail-safes, but the memory of those rattling, hissing pots still makes people flinch. Ernest P. Worrell started as a character in local television commercials and somehow transformed into one of the most inescapable advertising figures of the entire 1980s. Jim Varney created Ernest as a rubber-faced goofball who spoke directly to an unseen neighbor named Vern, leaning into the camera with bulging eyes and a voice that seemed permanently stuck between excitement and confusion. Local businesses across the country hired Varney to film custom Ernest commercials, meaning the character appeared selling everything from dairy products to car dealerships depending on where you lived. The flexibility was his genius. Ernest could pitch anything because his personality overwhelmed whatever product he was holding. Children adored him because he acted like a cartoon brought to life, and parents tolerated him because the commercials were genuinely funny in a way most local advertising never achieved. Eventually, Ernest grew beyond commercials entirely, starring in a series of films that ranged from charming to deeply strange. But his advertising roots remained his most remarkable achievement, proof that a single well-crafted character could dominate television without ever appearing in an actual program. Waiting until an acceptable hour to wake your parents was one of the most agonizing tests of patience any child in the 1980s ever faced. You would lie in bed, wide awake since 4 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and wondering if time itself had stopped just to torture you. Every creak of the house sounded like permission to finally move, and every glow from the hallway felt like a signal that maybe, just maybe, someone else was awake too. But the rule was clear in most homes, spoken or unspoken, and nobody dared cross that invisible line before 6 or 7 o'clock. So you counted ceiling tiles, whispered to siblings sharing the same agony, and pressed your ear against the door, hoping to hear footsteps that meant it was finally time. Some kids crept down the hallway and sat at the top of the stairs, peering toward the glow of the Christmas tree, torturing themselves with glimpses of wrapped presents they could not yet touch. The clock moved slower on Christmas morning than any other day of the year, and the wait felt like something designed by adults purely for entertainment. When that magic hour finally arrived, the stampede that followed shook the entire house awake. Few shows captured the joyful silliness of the 1970s quite like Laverne and Shirley. Starring Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams, the sitcom followed two best friends working at a Milwaukee brewery, and their lives were filled with non-stop antics. Laverne was the tough, street-smart one with her L stitched on her sweaters, while Shirley was the more innocent dreamer who often got pulled into the chaos. Together, they turned the most ordinary problems, dating mishaps, rent troubles, factory mix-ups, into comedic gold. The show also gave us one of the most memorable opening themes of the decade, with Laverne and Shirley chanting their made-up Yiddish rhyme before skipping off together. Laverne and Shirley was not about complicated plots or biting satire. It was about two women who faced the world with optimism, humor, and loyalty to each other. Even now, the show is remembered for its warmth as much as its slapstick. It was a comforting reminder that no matter how messy life got, you could get through it with a laugh and a friend. WK, a commercial that simply can't be forgotten. A cable car with its bell ringing and going up a rather inclined street in San Francisco, and a happy singer is shouting, "Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat!" Yes, this ad made a boxed rice mix seem like the most delicious thing in the world, which was just as good as a trip to California. My parents would prepare rice-a-roni for dinner at least thrice a week, and I believed that I was from the royal family. It was fancy rice, with seasoning to boot. The commercials portrayed beautiful families enjoying a treat of a meal when, in fact, it was only 20 minutes and a saucepan away. Well, do you know that rice-a-roni has an immigrant story that is worth telling? It was invented in the 1950s by a Canadian pasta company and an Armenian family recipe. By the 60s, the commercial jingle had become so associated with San Francisco that you couldn't listen to it without thinking of the Golden Gate Bridge. Today, the box exists, but the commercial jingle no longer does. Perhaps millennials don't even know what they are missing out on. But those of us who grew up humming the San Francisco treat see the truth. It wasn't just rice, it was fancy rice, the kind of rice that people who have a lot of money eat. And yes, it did taste better because of the jingle. On January 2nd, 1971, every cigarette commercial in America disappeared from television and radio. President Nixon had signed the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act the previous April, and the public celebrated what looked like a massive victory for public health. But the tobacco industry wanted the ban. Since 1967, the FCC's Fairness Doctrine had forced networks to air free anti-smoking ads alongside cigarette commercials. A 1972 study found those counter ads cut consumption by 531 cigarettes per person per year, while tobacco ads only boosted it by 95. The industry was losing on its own airwaves. By supporting the ban, tobacco companies killed the legal requirement for anti-smoking messages, saved over $200 million in annual spending, and shifted budgets to unregulated print. Smoking actually increased after the ban took effect. Scientists now call it one of the shrewdest corporate moves of the 20th century. When ALF first landed on television screens in 1986, nobody quite knew what to make of it. Here was a sarcastic, wisecracking alien from the planet Melmac who crash-landed into the Tanner family's garage, and then their lives. The premise alone was ridiculous, but that was the point. ALF, short for Alien Life Form, wasn't just another puppet or special effect. He was a full-blown sitcom character with a personality so strong it made the show feel both absurd and oddly relatable. He ate cats, argued with the family, and dropped punchlines sharper than most human comedians. Beneath all the weirdness, ALF was a story about connection, a lonely alien trying to fit in with a family that didn't quite know what to do with him. The combination of science fiction and domestic comedy was totally unique, and it worked better than anyone expected. ALF's sarcasm and the Tanner family's exasperation became a weekly comfort to viewers everywhere. Kids loved the puppet, adults loved the wit. Even today, that shaggy alien in sunglasses remains one of the strangest, most charming creations the 1980s ever gave us. In 1984, the FCC under Reagan relaxed restrictions on advertising to children, and Saturday morning television became an open market for cereal makers. Licensed characters from popular cartoons appeared on cereal boxes and in commercials that blurred the line between entertainment and product placement. The Center for Science in the Public Interest counted 54 Kellogg's commercials in 27.5 hours of Saturday morning programming. 98% promoted nutritionally poor products. Kids absorbed this every weekend, a steady message that sugar-loaded cereals were a normal part of breakfast. The FTC had actually proposed banning ads to preschoolers back in 1978, but Congress stripped the agency of that authority 2 years later under pressure from the food and advertising industries. The Children's Television Act did not pass until 1990. All in the Family pushed boundaries so far that modern audiences struggled to believe it ever made it past network censors. Archie Bunker sat in his worn recliner and delivered opinions that would end careers today, yet somehow millions gathered around their television sets to watch him do exactly that. The writing was sharp, the performances electric, and the controversy constant, because every episode seemed designed to make you laugh uncomfortably while questioning whether you should be laughing at all. Archie insulted neighbors, argued with his son-in-law, and dismissed entire groups of people with a casualness that felt shocking even back then. But the show was never meant to celebrate his views. It held a mirror up to American living rooms, forcing families to confront prejudices they may have ignored otherwise. Critics called it genius and dangerous in equal measure. The debates it sparked at dinner tables were louder than anything happening on screen. Today, reruns are rare, and when they do appear, they come wrapped in disclaimers and warnings. The world moved forward, and Archie Bunker's chair became a museum piece from an era that entertained through discomfort. The Star Wars Holiday Special reruns became a legendary piece of television history that nobody involved ever wanted to discuss again, and that is exactly what made it essential December viewing for families who loved laughing at things gone spectacularly wrong. The plot followed Chewbacca's family waiting for him to come home for Life Day, a holiday that looked like Christmas dipped in psychedelic confusion. Viewers sat through musical numbers, cooking segments, and a cartoon introducing Boba Fett while the main cast visibly questioned their life choices. Harrison Ford looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor, and Carrie Fisher sang a song so bizarre it circled back around to being strangely beautiful. Kids expecting lightsabers and space battles instead got Wookiee grunting and Jefferson Starship. Parents exchanged confused glances while children asked questions nobody could answer. The whole thing became a rite of passage, a holiday tradition built on shared disbelief. Watching it meant joining a secret club of people who understood that sometimes the funniest things on television were never meant to be funny at all. Crazy Eddie electronics store commercials were an assault on the senses in the best possible way, featuring a fast-talking pitchman who screamed at the camera like his life depended on selling stereos. His catchphrase became legendary overnight, shouted at such volume and speed that it felt like the commercial might explode. The ads promised prices so insane that competing with them was apparently impossible, and viewers believed they were getting deals that defied economics. Kids memorized the jingle, parents quoted it at dinner tables, and the sheer manic energy made these commercials impossible to ignore, even if you had no intention of buying anything. The humor was unintentional, but undeniable, because watching a grown man lose his mind over discounted televisions was comedy gold. People tuned in just to see what outrageous claim would come next. But behind the scenes, the real Crazy Eddie was running a massive fraud scheme that eventually sent him to prison. The commercials vanished once the scandal broke, and regulators cracked down on deceptive pricing claims that had fueled the campaign. Today, those screaming ads feel both hilarious and unsettling. Pharmaceutical ads without side effect warnings ran constantly in the 1980s, painting every pill and syrup as a simple solution to life's discomforts. These commercials showed smiling families, active grandparents, and relieved workers returning to their lives after a single dose. The narrator spoke in warm, reassuring tones, promising fast relief without ever mentioning what could go wrong. Viewers trusted these ads because medicine was supposed to help, not harm, and the companies seemed too established to mislead anyone. Parents gave children cold remedies and pain relievers without reading fine print that barely existed. Nobody imagined that pills making their headaches disappear might carry risks no one mentioned on television. When regulations finally required drug companies to disclose side effects, the change was dramatic. Commercials suddenly filled with rapid warnings about nausea, dizziness, and far worse possibilities. Looking back, it is startling how many families medicated themselves based on commercials that told only half the story. Those old ads remain a reminder that silence can be just as misleading as any spoken claim.
Dynasty captivated audiences with its portrayal of 1980s glamour and conflict, focusing on the wealthy Carrington family. Its 1981 premiere set a new standard for soap operas, with extravagant costumes and dramatic plot twists. The series became synonymous with the decade's excess, offering viewers an escape into luxury. However, Dynasty concluded in 1989, with dwindling viewership attributed to its over-the-top storylines and changing viewer preferences. The television landscape was shifting, and Dynasty's narrative extravagance no longer resonated as strongly with audiences, leading to its cancellation. Despite this, it remains celebrated for its fashion influence and as a quintessential example of 1980s drama, leaving a lasting impression on the genre and its audience.
The Ditto machine was the beating heart of every school office in the 1980s, and it came with a gift no teacher intended. Fresh worksheets arrived at your desk still damp, printed in that unmistakable purple ink, and carrying a sharp, sweet chemical smell that students treated like a reward. The duplicating fluid was a blend of methanol and isopropanol, two industrial solvents that vaporized on contact with air. Kids pressed their faces into the paper and inhaled deeply, sometimes competing for the freshest sheets with the strongest scent. Teachers rarely stopped them. The 1982 film Fast Times at Ridgemont High captured it perfectly, showing an entire classroom sniffing their handouts in unison. Nobody called it chemical exposure. They called it Tuesday. The A.B. Dick Company, which built most of the machines, filed for bankruptcy in 2004, long after photocopiers had replaced the purple-stained empire. Toy gun caps, made with real gunpowder, were another bizarrely dangerous product of the 1960s. These were tiny paper or plastic rolls of caps that you fed into toy revolvers and pistols. When struck, they ignited with a loud snap, a puff of smoke, and the unmistakable smell of gunpowder. For kids, it was thrilling. You felt like a real gunslinger. But the danger was obvious. The caps could misfire, explode prematurely, or burn skin when handled too closely, leaving kids with scorched fingers or worse. Some kids even set off whole rolls of caps with hammers, creating mini explosions in driveways and garages. Parents complained about burns, but kids thought it was part of the fun. Eventually, regulations changed the formula, removing real gunpowder and making caps much safer. Still, the original versions remain infamous, a mix of nostalgia, laughter, and a reminder of how much trust toy companies once placed in children's ability to handle explosives. Egg slicers with exposed piano wire blades were the kind of kitchen tool that looked like a tiny medieval torture device disguised as a breakfast accessory. The hinged frame held a row of razor-sharp wires stretched so tightly they hummed when you flicked them, and all you had to do was place a boiled egg on the base and press down for perfect slices. Kids were fascinated and could not resist running their fingers across the wires, discovering the hard way that those strings cut deeper than they looked. Parents shrugged off the occasional nick because the tool was simply too convenient to abandon. Every kitchen drawer in the 1970s seemed to have one rattling around beside the bottle opener. The problem was that the wires were completely unguarded, and when the slicer was pulled from a crowded drawer or handed to a child, fingers met blade before anyone could react. Emergency rooms documented enough injuries to catch the attention of regulators, and the most dangerous models were banned and redesigned with protective frames. Looking back, it feels absurd that a tool meant for something as gentle as a boiled egg could leave so many people reaching for bandages instead of toast. Chuck Norris home gym infomercials arrived in the 1980s with the kind of straight-faced sincerity that made them impossible to forget. Long before the internet turned Chuck Norris into a meme about impossible toughness, he appeared on late-night television demonstrating exercise equipment with the intensity of a man preparing for war. His commercials featured dramatic lighting, sweeping music, and Chuck performing moves that made basic fitness look like combat training. He spoke directly into the camera, promising results with authority that made viewers believe anything was possible if they just ordered. The Total Gym became his signature product, a sliding bench system that Chuck demonstrated while wearing tight workout clothes and maintaining eye contact that felt almost unsettling. Parents who stayed up past midnight found themselves hypnotized by the repetition, the testimonials, and the sheer confidence radiating from the screen. Many ended up ordering equipment that gathered dust in basements and garages across America. Looking back, these infomercials feel like artifacts from a simpler time, when an action star selling fitness gear was considered trustworthy rather than ironic. The desperate search for batteries on Christmas morning was one of the most devastating plot twists any 80s kid could experience. You tore open a package, gazed upon the toy you had dreamed about for months, and then saw the cruelest words ever printed on cardboard: "Batteries not included." Suddenly, the excitement drained away as parents scrambled through junk drawers, flashlight cases, and old remote controls looking for something that would bring your new treasure to life. Sometimes the batteries existed but were the wrong size, and you stood there holding a useless device while Dad tried to explain why a AA was not the same as a AAA, or why a C battery would never fit where a D belonged. Other times, the family car had to be raided, or worse, a trip to the only open gas station became the dramatic intermission nobody wanted. Kids whose toys worked immediately strutted around the living room like conquering heroes while the rest of us waited in battery purgatory, hoping someone would find that magical pack hiding in a kitchen cabinet somewhere behind the expired coupons. It was a universal childhood trauma wrapped in holiday packaging. Good Times was more than just a family sitcom. It was a cultural touchstone of the 1970s. Centered on the Evans family living in a Chicago housing project, the show mixed humor with the struggles of working-class life. At the heart was James and Florida Evans, trying to raise their children with dignity and love despite financial hardship. The comedy came from the family's resilience, their banter, and of course, the unforgettable character of JJ, whose catchphrase, "Dynamite," became a national sensation. Audiences tuned in not only to laugh, but to see reflections of real challenges: rent struggles, neighborhood troubles, and the ups and downs of family life. What made Good Times stand out was its honesty. It did not shy away from tough issues, yet it always found humor in the cracks. Families watching at home felt seen, and at the same time, they were entertained. The chemistry of the cast made the show shine, with Esther Roll and John Amos providing grounded performances, while Jimmy Walker brought the comedic spark. Even the youngest characters had sharp lines that added to the laughs. Good Times managed to mix reality with comedy in a way that felt both refreshing and important. It was proof that sitcoms did not need fancy settings or gimmicks, just strong characters, heartfelt writing, and humor that resonated with everyday life. That is why its catchphrases and moments are still remembered fondly today. Alice was... Picture this. You're a kid. You come in from the cold, your cheeks flushed, your nose stuffy, and there's Campbell's soup waiting to warm you up. That was Campbell's Dream sold in their famous Mem Good commercials.
They're good. Campbell's chicken.
From chicken noodles to tomatoes, this jingle burrowed itself into the American consciousness for decades. My grandma sang this every time she opened a can of something. The commercials made you feel like a warm hug in a bowl could solve anything. You probably didn't know that the slogan was first used as far back as 1935. By the 1960s and 70s, it was everywhere. I remember Campbell's soup commercials where kids were enjoying noodles like they were having the best meal of their lives. And let's face it, if you were a kid in the 80s, it was the best and even better with a grilled cheese sandwich. The brilliance of good is how simple it is. Not a single spectacular scene, not a single scene that would require a special effects team. Just a bowl of soup and a catchy motto that would stick to your head. Campbell's still makes soup, but the catchy tune no longer graces the radio. But admit it, if someone says, good, right now, you instantly taste chicken noodles or tomatoes. That's marketing magic. Folgers ran ads throughout the decade featuring a fictional neighbor named Mrs. Olson, played by actress Virginia Christine. The script never changed. A young wife brewed terrible coffee, her husband grimaced, and the marriage appeared to wobble. Then Mrs. Olson arrived with a can of Folgers, and domestic order was restored. Christine played the part for over 20 years and became one of the most recognized faces in advertising. The premise was blunt. A woman's value at home depended on brewing decent coffee, and failure meant losing her husband's approval. Feminist critics called it degrading. Behavioral scientists now focus on a different detail. The ads used what researchers call the competent helper model, a trusted peer who solves your problem with one product. It is the same framework that influencer marketing runs on today, repackaged from a 1970s kitchen for the social media era. No list of weirdly wonderful 1980s sitcoms would be complete without Small Wonder. The premise was bizarre even by television standards. A robotics engineer secretly built a robot girl named Vicky and passed her off as his daughter. The result? A perfectly deadpan child who spoke in monotone and lifted refrigerators without blinking. The show's special effects were minimal, but its heart was enormous. It mixed science fiction absurdity with family comedy in a way that was both ridiculous and oddly sweet. Vicky's attempts to fit in, learning emotions, going to school, and dealing with nosy neighbors mirrored the struggles of any kid trying to figure out the world. Audiences couldn't help but root for her, even when the jokes were cheesy or the premise stretched logic beyond recognition. What made Small Wonder special was its sincerity. It wasn't trying to be clever or cynical. It genuinely believed in the power of family, no matter how unconventional. And maybe that's why, decades later, people still remember that stiff little robot girl who somehow managed to teach everyone what it meant to be human. He-Man did not start as a cartoon. He started as an action figure that needed a commercial, and in the deregulated world of 80s kids television, the entire show became that commercial. G.I. Joe, Transformers, Thundercats, and Jem existed primarily to introduce new toys that appeared in stores the same week their episodes aired. Each half-hour program was a product demonstration wrapped in a storyline, and the FCC's relaxed rules under the Reagan administration made it legal. Cartoon violence jumped from roughly 18 acts per hour in 1980 to over 26 by 1990. The moral epilogues tacked onto each show, the knowing is half the battle segments, were calculated additions meant to keep regulators at bay. Congress passed a bill to curb the practice in 1988. Reagan pocket vetoed it. The Children's Television Act did not arrive until 1990. Love American Style was a comedy anthology that treated romance and relationships with a wink, a nudge, and a sensibility that feels jarring when revisited today. Each episode featured standalone stories that played with love, lust, and misunderstandings, often relying on humor that objectified women and reduced relationships to punchlines about manipulation and conquest. The show featured big-name guest stars and colorful sets that screamed 1970s glamour, but the scripts frequently leaned on jokes about infidelity, jealousy, and gender dynamics that feel almost alien to modern sensibilities. Men chased women, women schemed to trap men, and everyone seemed perfectly comfortable with roles that society has long since questioned. The laugh track roared through moments that now feel awkward, signaling to audiences that they should find humor in situations built on uncomfortable assumptions. At the time, it was breezy entertainment meant for easy laughs after dinner, but the way it handled attraction, consent, and relationships has left it largely forgotten, tucked away from streaming platforms and rerun schedules that prefer cleaner nostalgia. He-Man and She-Ra, a Christmas special, brought the power of Grayskull crashing directly into holiday traditions with a story so gloriously over the top that it became impossible to forget. The plot transported two Earth children to Eternia, where muscled heroes protected them from Hordak and Skeletor while teaching everyone about the true meaning of Christmas. Watching He-Man explain holiday spirit to alien warriors created cognitive dissonance that only made the viewing experience funnier with age. Kids in the 1980s saw adventure and moral lessons delivered with complete sincerity and earnest conviction. Adults rewatching decades later saw something far more surreal, a collision of toy commercial storytelling and genuine holiday sentiment wrapped in animation magic. Skeletor, the villain who spent every regular episode trying to conquer the universe, found himself softened by Christmas spirit in ways that made no narrative sense, yet perfect emotional sense. The special etched itself into the memories of everyone who caught it during that brief broadcast window. Finding it again became a holiday treasure hunt for nostalgic viewers. Miller Lite commercials turned a simple beer argument into one of the most entertaining ad campaigns of the 1980s, featuring retired athletes and celebrities screaming at each other over whether the beer tasted great or was less filling. The debates escalated into absurd physical confrontations, barroom brawls, and comedic standoffs that made choosing a side feel like the most important decision anyone could make. Kids imitated the arguments on playgrounds, parents quoted the catchphrases at parties, and the campaign became a cultural touchstone that transcended beer advertising. The humor worked because the stakes were deliberately low while the passion was cranked impossibly high. Watching famous athletes nearly come to blows over a beer slogan was comedy gold. But some commercials featured scenarios regulators found problematic, including depictions of drinking that implied intoxication was funny rather than dangerous. The more aggressive spots were quietly retired as alcohol advertising guidelines tightened. Today, those classic debates feel like relics of a time when beer commercials could be genuinely hilarious without worrying about the message they sent. Alcohol ads featuring pregnant women socializing appeared with surprising frequency in the 1980s, showing expectant mothers enjoying wine at dinner parties and relaxing with cocktails as if pregnancy changed nothing. These commercials reflected a time when medical guidance about alcohol and pregnancy remained vague and largely ignored by advertisers seeking the widest possible audience. Women saw themselves represented in ads that normalized drinking throughout all stages of life, including pregnancy. Nobody questioned the imagery because doctors often downplayed the risks, and advertisers followed cultural norms rather than scientific caution. Families watched these commercials without alarm, absorbing the message that a glass of wine posed no real danger. It was only later, when research firmly established the connection between alcohol during pregnancy and developmental harm, that outrage arrived. Regulators banned any advertising depicting pregnant women drinking, and warning labels became mandatory on all alcohol products. Today, those old commercials feel almost unbelievable, relics of an era when advertising priorities overshadowed the safety of the most vulnerable.
Cheers is the beloved sitcom that turned a Boston bar into everyone's favorite hangout spot, premiering in 1982. It created a unique sense of community and belonging, where the humor and chemistry between Sam Malone, a former baseball player turned bartender, and his quirky patrons and staff resonated deeply with viewers. This camaraderie, combined with the engaging will they won't they romance between Sam and Diane, captivated the audience, making Cheers one of the most cherished sitcoms of the 1980s and early 90s. Despite a slow start, it eventually soared in ratings. The show concluded in 1993 after 11 successful seasons, with the creators opting to end while the show was still beloved by audiences. This decision was influenced by a desire to conclude on a narrative high, ensuring the series would be remembered fondly. Today, Cheers stands as a symbol of comfort and nostalgia, embodying the essence of community in a rapidly changing world.
Walk past the faculty lounge in any 1980s school and you could smell it before you reached the door. Cigarette smoke hung in visible layers above a coffee pot, a microwave, and a table covered in half-graded papers. Teachers smoked between periods, during planning time, and in some buildings, during staff meetings while discussing curriculum. A 1988 survey by the National School Boards Association, conducted alongside the American Cancer Society, found that many districts had no tobacco policy at all. In elementary schools without a dedicated lounge, teachers ducked behind the building or stepped into a hallway corner. When districts finally banned indoor smoking on campus, teachers moved to their cars in the parking lot, creating a daily ritual visible to every kid who looked out the window during class. Children's chemistry kits with cyanide compounds sound like an urban legend, but they were very real in the 1960s. Marketed as junior science labs, these kits came with test tubes, beakers, powders, and liquids for at-home experiments. Kids could mix acids, test pH levels, and create small chemical reactions right at the kitchen table. It seemed educational, futuristic, and impressive. But the truth was disturbing. Some kits contained genuinely hazardous substances, including cyanide salts, which were labeled only with small warnings and left in the hands of unsupervised children. The instructions encouraged kids to mix chemicals freely, often without gloves, masks, or any protective equipment. Parents thought they were buying educational fun, but what they were really doing was handing their children miniature poison labs. Reports of burns, poisonings, and toxic fumes became impossible to ignore, and regulators eventually cracked down. Still, for the kids who grew up with them, chemistry kits were unforgettable. They made you feel like a scientist, even if the risk was sky high. Today, they stand as one of the wildest examples of how far the 1960s pushed the idea of learning through play. Fondue, sets with unshielded open flame burners, were the crown jewel of every 1970s dinner party, sitting at the center of the table like a bubbling cauldron of social sophistication. The setup was simple and terrifying in equal measure. A pot of boiling cheese balanced on a thin metal stand, heated by a canister of fuel that burned with an open flame inches from napkins and wandering hands. Everyone gathered around with long forks, dipping bread and fruit into the molten mixture while the flame flickered close to anything flammable. Kids reached across with skewers that dripped hot cheese onto tablecloths and bare arms. Spills were common, burns were shrugged off, and the occasional flare-up when fuel was refilled mid-party was treated as entertainment rather than emergency. Nobody considered that an open flame surrounded by overexcited children was a recipe for disaster. Today, unshielded open-flame tabletop burners are banned under fire safety codes, and fondue sets use electric heating elements instead. But the memory of that wobbly flame lighting up a crowded dinner table still flickers warmly for anyone who survived the era unscathed. Easy Eddie electronics ads blasted onto television screens with an intensity that made other commercials seem like whispered suggestions. The pitchman, played by a radio disc jockey named Jerry Carroll, screamed about prices being insane while spinning, pointing, and generally behaving as though he had consumed far too much caffeine before every taping. His eyes bulged, his voice cracked, and his energy never dropped below maximum, even when describing mundane products like stereo systems. Viewers either loved the chaos or muted their sets the moment his face appeared, but nobody could ignore him. The ads became legendary in the New York area, where Crazy Eddie stores dominated the electronics market throughout the 1980s. What audiences did not know was that the real Eddie Antar, whose name and persona inspired the campaign, was running one of the largest corporate fraud schemes in American history. He skimmed money, inflated inventory records, and eventually fled the country before being captured and imprisoned. The screaming commercials that once seemed like harmless retail theater became evidence of something far darker hiding behind all that manufactured excitement. Sitting on the floor in your brand new Christmas pajamas was the official uniform of holiday morning in the 1980s, and nothing else felt quite right. Many families had a tradition of opening one gift on Christmas Eve, and that gift was almost always pajamas specifically designed for the next morning's festivities. You woke up already dressed for the occasion, padding down the hallway in flannel, fleece, or something covered in candy canes and snowflakes. The fabric was fresh, the elastic was snug, and the whole outfit smelled like that particular scent of brand new clothing still holding on to traces of the store. Sitting cross-legged beside the tree, surrounded by wrapping paper and siblings in matching outfits, felt like being part of something perfectly choreographed, even though nothing was planned at all. Photographs from those mornings always show kids drowning in slightly too big pajamas, grinning at the camera with bed hair and pure joy. The pajamas usually lasted through breakfast, lunch, and sometimes the entire day because nobody wanted to break the spell by putting on regular clothes. Was a spin-off from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and it quickly established itself as a hit in its own right. Valerie Harper's character, Rhoda Morgenstern, moved back to New York to start a new life, and her sharp wit and self-deprecating humor made the show endlessly entertaining. Unlike many sitcom heroines, Rhoda was not glamorous or polished. She was relatable, funny, and always in the middle of some awkward situation. Her adventures navigating work, friendships, and relationships gave audiences a steady stream of laughs. Rhoda's interactions with her family, especially her overbearing mother, provided some of the show's best comedy. It was a sitcom built on character-driven humor, with Rhoda's quick comebacks and quirky personality stealing the spotlight. What made the show stand out was its warmth. Underneath the jokes, Rhoda was about a woman trying to find her place in the world, and audiences connected with her struggles and triumphs. The humor was sharp but never mean-spirited, and it reflected the challenges of urban life in the 1970s with honesty and charm. Valerie Harper's performance made Rhoda one of the most beloved characters of the decade, and the show captured her perfectly. It was funny, heartfelt, and always engaging, reminding viewers that even when life was messy, you could still laugh your way through it. That combination is what kept audiences tuning in week after week. Elsie the cow was not just any mascot, she was the mascot.
Beauregard.
Oh, Mom.
During the 60s, Borden's dairy products commercial made drinking milk and consuming cheese a family affair because of Elsie. Yes, a cartoon cow had more personality than half the television personalities of her generation. I recall seeing Elsie on everything from the milk cartons to cheese wrappings when I was at my grandma's. The commercials depicted her as a jovial, humorous cow with an ability to make people crave dairy products. Fun fact, Elsie first appeared in 1936 and was chosen as one of the greatest advertising characters of all time. Real quick, if you're loving this content as much as we loved making it, hit subscribe to stay connected and help us reach even more amazing folks like you. The ads were very family-oriented, and the portrayal of Elsie as the perfect mother who just so happened to be a cow was done in good taste. They made milk and cheese seem like something you could crave, which, let's face it, you can. Though Borden's is still in existence, Elsie is not the celebrity she used to be. But those old commercials? They're pure nostalgia gold. If you ever come across vintage Elsie merchandise, get it. It is a piece of advertising memorabilia. Now, every time I pour milk or slice cheese, it reminds me of Elsie the cow. She was not merely selling dairy, she was selling experiences. And let's be honest, dairy just tastes better when it comes with a side of cute cow imagery. Wonder Bread told families it built strong bodies 12 ways. The commercials showed kids growing taller and running faster, all because their mothers chose the right loaf. The slogan was printed directly on the wrapper. In 1971, the FTC charged ITT Continental Baking with deceptive advertising, finding that Wonder Bread was no more nutritious than any other enriched white bread, and the 12 Ways claim had no scientific basis. The company received a cease and desist order. It was among the first major cases where a federal agency declared a household food brand's core message a fabrication. Continental Baking contested the ruling for years. Modern nutrition science has been blunter. Enriched white bread carries a glycemic index comparable to table sugar, and the synthetic vitamins added back to stripped flour replace a fraction of what whole grain provides. Millions of parents bought a slogan that meant nothing. If silver spoons had been a toy catalog come to life, it wouldn't have looked much different. The show followed Ricky Stratton, a young boy who moved in with his wealthy, fun-loving father, Edward, after his parents' divorce. Their home looked like every kid's dream, a mansion filled with arcade machines, go-karts, and even a working train running through the living room. But beyond the fantasy, Silver Spoons was about learning what money can't buy: responsibility, kindness, and connection. Ricky brought structure to his father's carefree lifestyle, while Edward taught his son to loosen up and enjoy life. The chemistry between Joel Higgins and a young Ricky Schroeder made the father-son bond both funny and heartfelt. The show also reflected the 1980s obsession with wealth and luxury, but always with a wink. It reminded viewers that even in a mansion full of gadgets, the real treasures were laughter and love. Silver Spoons gave audiences a weekly escape into wish fulfillment, while gently grounding it with lessons that still resonate today. Long before a cartoon camel targeted kids, real physicians did the selling on camera. Throughout the 50s and 60s, cigarette companies ran television spots featuring doctors who endorsed their brands by name. Camel asked viewers to consider that more doctors smoked Camels than any other cigarette, a claim the company manufactured by handing free cartons to physicians at medical conventions and then surveying them on their preferences. Chesterfield cited expert findings in 1953 that claimed smoking had no adverse effect on the nose, throat, or sinuses. Morton Levin had published his study linking smoking to lung cancer 3 years earlier. By the mid-80s, tobacco companies spent over $2 billion a year on promotion. The practice of using doctors as pitchmen for lethal products was never formally outlawed. It simply became too indefensible to continue. Three's Company built its entire comedic foundation on misunderstandings, innuendos, and a premise that feels almost impossible to explain to younger generations without raising eyebrows. Jack Tripper pretended to be gay so his landlord would allow him to live with 2 women, and every episode milked that deception for every laugh imaginable. The humor relied heavily on winks, double meanings, and physical comedy that danced right up to the edge of what networks would tolerate. Much of the comedy came at the expense of the very identity Jack was pretending to have, using stereotypes as punchlines in ways that feel deeply uncomfortable today. At the time, audiences adored the slapstick, the misunderstandings, and the constant romantic tension bubbling beneath the surface. The show became a cultural phenomenon, launching careers and filling Thursday nights with laughter coast to coast. But the jokes about sexuality, the casual stereotyping, and the relentless innuendo have aged into something harder to watch without cringing. Modern viewers often find themselves torn between nostalgia for its charm and discomfort with how it mined identity for comedy. Family ties. Christmas episodes turned the Keaton household into a battleground between 80s materialism and traditional holiday values, with Alex P. Keaton usually learning lessons about generosity despite his best efforts to stay cynical. Michael J. Fox brought such charm that even Alex's most mercenary holiday schemes became endearing rather than off-putting. The show captured the decade's cultural tensions perfectly, pitting Reagan-era ambition against hippie-era idealism within a single family gathering. Christmas episodes amplified these dynamics, forcing Alex to confront what the holiday actually meant beyond gift exchanges. The humor came from family dynamics that felt authentic, parents who genuinely loved their children while disagreeing with their worldviews. Mallory provided comic relief through fashion obsessions, Jennifer delivered precocious observations, and parents anchored everything with warmth that never felt forced. Holiday specials resolved conflicts with hugs and realizations that family mattered more than success. Those Christmas episodes defined an era of sitcom holiday specials, ambitious in their themes while still delivering the comfort viewing families expected. 60 commercials that made millions of people laugh out loud and then quietly disappeared from the airwaves forever. The ad agencies moved on. The networks scrubbed the tapes. But you remember them because the funniest ones always stuck. If any of these brought back a memory you had completely buried, drop it in the comments. And if you want more from the decade that had absolutely no filter, hit subscribe. There is plenty more where this came from.